Welcome to the debate. Today, we are looking at really the greatest biological paradox of the modern world.
It really is.
Yeah, I mean, why is it that humans living in the safest, most comfortable, temperature controlled environments in human history are, well, biologically destroying themselves from the inside out? We spend a massive amount of our lives trying to build this perfect enclosure.
Mm-hmm.
We seek robust health, financial safety, ultimate comfort. We insulate ourselves from the precariousness of nature, from physical pain, from uncertainty. And yet, having constructed what is essentially a golden cage, we are biologically and psychologically withering from a profound sense of existential boredom.
It really is the ultimate evolutionary trap. I mean, we spent millennia trying to eliminate physical pain and environmental threat, assuming that the absence of struggle would just equal absolute human flourishing.
Right, like we finally won the game.
Exactly. But when we look at the human animal inside this perfectly engineered environment, we see a creature that is pacing, fragmenting, and falling apart. We've removed the struggle, and we discovered that without it, our internal systems begin to collapse. The data is completely clear here. The brain doesn't experience a lack of purpose as rest. It actually experiences that void as a direct threat.
Which brings us to a remarkable 3,000-year intellectual and scientific convergence that we are exploring today. Across ancient philosophy, world religions, and now cutting-edge neurobiology, there is absolute agreement on one specific concept, and that is meaning.
Yeah.
If we define meaning as a sense of coherence, purpose, and significance, it is not just some cultural luxury or a philosophical hobby. It is the fundamental biological engine of human life.
Oh, the evidence on that front is overwhelming. A life without meaning isn't merely unhappy. It is biologically and spiritually unviable. It operates as the psychological equivalent of oxygen.
And that brings us to the core of our discussion, a division drawn directly from the material we are examining today, which we might call the Great Fault Line.
Right.
We agree that meaning is the ultimate biological engine and a psychological necessity. But where does it actually come from? I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. My position is that meaning is discovered. It is an inherent objective property of the universe, a fundamental reality that humans must align with in order to flourish.
And I come at it from a different way. My position is that meaning is constructed. It is not an objective property of the cosmos waiting to be uncovered. It is a brilliant, entirely necessary biological and psychological narrative, basically a cognitive scaffold that we map onto a fundamentally indifferent universe in order to survive it.
Well, let me lay out the architecture of the discovered perspective, because it stretches back thousands of years and still perfectly maps onto our neurobiology today.
Go ahead.
Consider Aristotle's concept of telos, the idea that all things have an ultimate purpose or intended end. For humans, that telos is eudaimonia, flourishing through purposeful activity that is aligned with virtue. We also see this in the Stoic concept of the logos, the rational, divine order of the universe.
Right, the grand cosmic order.
Exactly. Meaning was found by aligning the personal will with this pre-existing cosmic order. I want you to think of a compass. A compass doesn't invent magnetic north, it discovers it. It reacts to an invisible but objectively real external force.
Okay, I see where you're going.
Our biological and psychological systems are wired to align with the cosmic order in the exact same way. Human biology thrives only when it clicks into an inherent external truth. The compass needle settles. When we are misaligned with that reality, our systems drift into chaos. We don't make the map. We learn how to read the map that was already there.
That is a beautifully elegant, comforting architecture. I'll give you that. But it fundamentally misreads the nature of the universe and our place in it. If you look at how the existentialists saw this, thinkers like Albert Camus and Jean-Paul Sartre, they realized that the universe isn't imbued with a rational order or a divine telos.
They called it absurd, right?
Yes, the universe is absurd. And that doesn't mean it's silly. It means it is fundamentally indifferent to human existence, to our suffering, and to our joy. Meaning is not a pre-existing cosmic map waiting to be unrolled. It is a vital evolutionary adaptation. We are pattern-seeking, forward-looking creatures who evolved a unique and, frankly, heavy burden, which is an awareness of our own finitude. To survive the terrifying awareness of that reality, we had to invent meaning. We create it through authentic choices and commitments. We are drawing the map ourselves in the dark, because without that cognitive scaffold, the existential dread would literally paralyze us. Meaning isn't a cosmic truth, it's an internal survival tool.
Let's test that idea of meaning as a mere internal survival tool against the reality of extreme human hardship. The material introduces us to the suffering paradox.
Right.
This is the observation that humans can endure immense, almost unimaginable physical hardship, but we utterly shatter under senseless suffering.
Yeah, and there's absolutely no better documentation of this than the work of neuropsychiatrist Viktor Frankl. He observed this directly during his internment in Nazi concentration camps. Frankl noted that physical robustness, youth, or raw health were actually terrible predictors of survival.
Wow.
Yeah. The inmates who survived were those who possessed what he called a will to meaning.
And what did that actually look like in practice, on the ground?
It was deeply personal. It might have been a child waiting for them outside the camps, or, in Frankl's own case, a manuscript he felt compelled to reconstruct and finish. Having a future-oriented why fundamentally transformed their physical body's ability to withstand systemic trauma.
Right.
When the brain has a specific goal it believes in, it actually modulates the nervous system. It regulates stress hormones like cortisol, preventing them from reaching toxic levels that destroy the immune system. This birthed logotherapy, the psychological framework positing that our primary drive is the search for significance. Frankl echoed Nietzsche, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how."
Which is a powerful quote.
It is, and it proves my point perfectly. The why didn't come from the sky. It was a book to write. It was an internal, psychological shock absorber that kept the biological system running.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning, because you are describing the mechanism of survival, not the source of its power. Let's look at how world religions handle the suffering paradox.
Okay.
They provide meta-narratives, grand cosmic stories, like Dharma in Hinduism, or Tikkun Olam in Judaism, which means repairing the world. These frameworks don't just act as a shock absorber, they perform a literal alchemy on the human psyche. They transmute raw torture into meaningful sacrifice, into a sacred duty.
I agree they are powerful, but
But if meaning is just a biological hack, a constructed illusion we project onto a void, how does it have the structural integrity to sustain a human being through absolute horror?
well, I wouldn't call it an illusion. It is a biological imperative.
But let me offer an analogy to explain why the source matters so much here. Think of the placebo effect in medicine. A placebo can actually cause measurable physical healing in the body. It can lower blood pressure, reduce pain, even change brain chemistry.
Sure, the sugar pill.
Right, but it has one absolute non-negotiable requirement. The patient must genuinely believe it is real medicine. If the doctor hands you a sugar pill and says, hey, this is just a constructed illusion to trick your brain into healing, the placebo effect completely vanishes. The magic disappears.
I see what you're saying.
If we know that meaning is just a cognitive scaffold we invented to deal with an absurd universe, it loses its power to sustain us through tragedy. It only works if it is believed to be objectively true.
You're assuming that constructing meaning is synonymous with faking it or, lying to ourselves. It's not a sugar pill. It's more like building a shelter. Just because I built the house myself with my own two hands doesn't mean it won't keep the rain off me.
But the rain is real.
Yes, and the protection is real. I know I built it, but it still provides real, objective protection. But let's step away from extreme psychological trauma, because that psychological shock absorber is vital there, but we don't have to look at concentration camps to see this working. We can actually see it under a microscope in everyday people. We have to ask why the body reacts so differently to different types of happiness.
You're talking about the physiological divergence between different states of well-being.
Exactly. We live in a culture saturated with dopamine, constantly chasing what the ancients called hedonia, pure pleasure-seeking. It's the pursuit of comfort, food, status, immediate gratification.
I actually have to agree with you on the dopamine aspect. Hedonia is a biological dead end. The satisfaction always fades. You invariably hit the hedonic treadmill where you always need more just to feel baseline normal. But that actually proves my point.
But wait, contrast that hedonia with eudaimonic well-being. Eudaimonia is purposeful activity, the pursuit of meaning, which often involves deep sacrifice and the exact opposite of comfort. The field of psychoneuroimmunology has moved this out of philosophy and into the laboratory.
Right.
When a human being operates with high eudaimonic well-being, their very gene expression changes. They show downregulated CTRA gene expression.
Which is a vital mechanism to understand. The CTRA gene network is essentially the body's cellular panic button.
Right. When we lack purpose or when we are chronically lonely, that panic button gets stuck in the on position. The body prepares for bacterial infection from a physical wound, so it floods the system with pro-inflammatory proteins. Over time, that chronic inflammation causes cardiovascular disease, neurodegeneration, and early death.
Yeah, it's incredibly destructive.
It is. But purposeful, meaningful living turns that panic button off. Furthermore, it calms the brain's default mode network, or the DMN. The DMN is the brain's idling state, but without a clear purpose, it idles in anxiety, depression, and severe rumination. Now, I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that this biological mechanism is a divine mandate or evidence of a cosmic logos. Let me tell you why.
Go ahead.
This is pure, unadulterated, evolutionary social coordination. Meaning is the glue that allowed early humans to form superorganisms. Tribes that believed in a shared purpose, whether they were building an early monument or coordinating a highly dangerous mammoth hunt, survived longer and outcompeted tribes that focused solely on individual consumption.
So it's just survival of the fittest group?
Yes, evolution built this cellular shield. It rewarded individuals who contributed to the collective by lowering their inflammation and regulating their cortisol. It's an elegant, brilliant cellular hack designed entirely by natural selection to keep us working together.
You're taking the biological data and drawing the exact wrong conclusion. Let's turn that data right back around. Look at the Blue Zones research, the studies of the world's longest living populations.
Okay.
The material explicitly cites the Japanese concept of ikigai, having a specific, meaningful reason to wake up in the morning. The data shows that having that purpose leads to a 15 to 20% lower mortality rate. Or consider the psychological data on parenting.
Sure.
On a moment-to-moment basis, if you test parents, they frequently report lower levels of happiness than non-parents. They are sleep-deprived, their dopamine is low, their resources are constantly demanded upon, yet they consistently report the highest levels of life significance and structural meaning.
Well, because parenting ensures the continuation of the species. It's evolutionary biology at its most fundamental. It forces you to construct a meaning around the survival of your offspring.
But here is the critical pushback that exposes the flaw in the purely evolutionary argument. If we are nothing but evolutionary machines, programmed strictly for survival and reproduction, then mere comfort, the golden cage we open the show with, should satisfy us completely.
Wait, how so?
Think about it. A cage with unlimited calories, perfect safety, temperature control, and no predators is the ultimate evolutionary victory. We won the game. If we were just biological machines, we should be resting, conserving energy, and feeling utterly content. But we don't. We wither. We self-destruct.
Yeah, but
The biological data actually proves Aristotle was right. The fact that an individual in a state of total security can suffer more deeply than someone facing extreme hardship with a clear why tells us everything. Think of an engine. If you take a high-performance engine, disconnect it from its drive shaft, and just run it in neutral at high RPMs, what happens?
It burns out.
It will eventually shake itself to pieces. It will destroy its own components because it is not doing the work it was designed to do. Our biology demands we lock into the universe's intended gear. That is telos. We are not just surviving, we are built to align with something larger than ourselves.
I have to challenge that engine metaphor directly. An engine implies a mechanic.
It implies a blueprint drawn up in advance by a designer. Humans weren't built that way. We self-destruct in the cage because we are a species built for the climb, through millions of years of having to struggle to survive.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean the mountain was placed there by a divine architect for us to ascend. We just need to climb to keep our neurobiology regulated. And that brings us to the ultimate climb. Really the heaviest cognitive load human beings carry. It's what the material calls the finitude problem.
Yes. And this is exactly why the engine needs a destination. We are the only creatures on this planet burdened with the explicit, constant awareness of our own mortality. We don't just react to immediate threats, we have the foresight to look down the timeline of our lives and see our own inevitable end. And without a robust framework, that foresight produces paralyzing despair.
Because it is objectively terrifying to know you are temporary.
Exactly. And this is where the discovered framework shows its absolute necessity. Religions and grand philosophical traditions solve this finitude problem by offering transgenerational connections. They don't just give you a task, they connect the individual to ancestors, to future generations, to eternal lineages.
Right.
They ensure that your personal joys, your quiet sufferings, your sacrifices are not just random biological noise, but vital plot points in a timeless cosmic drama. This shifts the focus away from the fragile, anxious ego to something enduring. Discovering your place in that grand external narrative is the only mechanism robust enough to prevent existential terror from completely short-circuiting the brain's reward system.
But let's go back to your idea of drawing the map in the dark. If you try to face the absolute finality of death armed with nothing but a narrative you openly acknowledge you invented yourself, the terror will break through. The structural integrity just isn't there.
That's a compelling argument, but have you considered that relying on a discovered cosmic narrative is actually what makes a person intellectually and psychologically fragile?
How so? I mean, it's provided resilience for millennia.
Because it relies on external validation that isn't guaranteed. What happens when you look up at the stars and you don't feel the logos? What happens when a senseless tragedy strikes? You know, a child dies, a natural disaster wipes out a community, and the religious meta-narrative suddenly feels hollow or contradictory.
That is a crisis of faith, certainly.
Right, and the external shelter collapses, and the person is left in ruins because they never learned how to build their own meaning. I argue that true resilience, the deepest, most robust form of human endurance, comes from the existentialist courage to look directly at the indifferent void, to acknowledge the sheer absurdity of it all, and to commit to a purpose anyway.
But where does the structural integrity of that commitment come from if you know you are making it up? Why doesn't it just crumble under the weight of real tragedy?
It comes from agency. It comes from the indisputable fact that you chose it. Look at the science of positive psychology, specifically Martin Seligman's PERMA model. It identifies meaning as one of the 5 essential pillars of human well-being, noting that meaning predicts long-term life satisfaction far more robustly than wealth, status, or raw intelligence. And crucially, this holds true whether one subscribes to a grand religious meta-narrative or not.
But they are still anchoring to something outside themselves, surely.
They are anchoring to values they've consciously chosen. Think of a secular doctor dedicating her life to curing a rare disease. She knows she might not defeat it before she dies. She knows the universe doesn't inherently care if the disease is cured, but she is constructing immense, biologically protective meaning anyway.
Right.
She isn't doing it because the cosmos demanded it. She is doing it because she has independently chosen to value human life and alleviate suffering. Constructing meaning is not a fragile illusion. It is the ultimate act of human agency. It turns the chaos of raw sensory data into a life story worth living, completely on our own terms. That takes far more structural integrity than just obeying a pre-existing cosmic law.
We have unpacked incredibly dense material here today, moving from the profound trauma in the concentration camps of Viktor Frankl to the cellular expressions of our DNA, all the way to the very nature of the cosmos itself.
We really covered a lot of ground.
We did. To summarize my position in light of this discussion, the data clearly shows we have a profound, non-negotiable biological dependence on meaning. We literally cannot function without it. When we lack it, our default mode network becomes hyperactive, our inflammation spikes, our minds fragment.
Mm-hmm.
This rigid, specific biological requirement makes absolutely no sense unless meaning is a discovered alignment with a fundamental reality, a telos or a logos. The compass needle spins frantically in the golden cage, precisely because it is being shielded from the magnetic north it was designed to point toward. We must discover our intended purpose to survive.
And to summarize my view, meaning is not an external cosmic reality. It is humanity's greatest constructed masterpiece. It is the brilliant cognitive and cellular hack that keeps our biological systems from drifting into chaos in a fundamentally indifferent universe.
Right.
Whether it's the ancient tribes coordinating to survive, the parent sacrificing sleep for their child, or the doctor fighting a terminal disease, we project significance onto our actions because without that narrative, the void of finitude would paralyze us. We don't find the map, we forge it through our choices. And in doing so, we tame our own biology and claim our agency.
Yet, despite this fundamental disagreement on the origin of meaning, there is an absolute, undeniable point of convergence here, and it is a point drawn directly from the material that should give anyone listening serious pause. Meaning is not a cultural luxury. It is not a secondary goal you get around to after you've secured your wealth and your comfort.
No, not at all.
It is the psychological equivalent of oxygen. A life without a clear why, even a perfectly comfortable, flawlessly safe life, is biologically unviable. It is a literal threat to the organism.
Completely agreed. The material makes it exceedingly clear that while moment-to-moment happiness and deep meaning are empirically different, meaning is the shock absorber that makes human existence sustainable. The pursuit of meaning isn't just poetry, it is a hard biological and psychological necessity.
Which brings us back to where we started. We leave you with a provocative thought drawn directly from this 3,000-year convergence of philosophy, religion, and modern science. If you find yourself withering, feeling a persistent sense of existential boredom, lethargy, or chronic anxiety despite having all your basic needs met, consider this possibility. Your current, comfortable golden cage might be the very thing suffocating you.
Our neurobiological systems were simply not built for the golden cage. They were built for the engine of purpose. There is so much more to explore in this source material, especially regarding how meaning acts as a cellular shield, dynamically protecting our bodies from the inside out.
So, we leave you with a question to turn over in your own mind. Look closely at the architecture of your daily life. What is the current engine of your meaning? What is the specific why that justifies the struggles and the stress you face today? Or has your pursuit of perfect comfort left you stalled in the void?